Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the idea of name calling. Now, every group, subgroup, racial group, LGBTQ plus group, women, every group, black people, every group's been protected by not only online but in the in the legal marketplace, if you will, through the courts. So you can't use the N word, a variation of black in Spanish or Latin. You can't use names, that's homophobic, and so on. So pretty much every class is protected, and if you mention something online, then your video can be taken down, or your account can be closed. You can lose your job. You can be a pariah. Getting another job can be tough. You can have your bank account closed. There are all sorts of punishments, extra legal and legal, that can be used against anyone that name calls a protected class. Now, the only class of people not protected are white people, and particularly straight white males. Now, this is an ideological construct that straight white males have social power. And again, it's all ideological nonsense. But so the idea is, well, straight white males have social power, therefore they are immune from the effects of name calling. Whereas if you're a marginalized group, then you suffer from name calling because it either makes you feel bad or affects your self-esteem or something like that, I think it goes. But so only straight white males are not protected. And you can call them any names you want, and nothing will happen to you. You may even be applauded for it. So even news anchors will say that anyone that voted for Donald Trump is a Nazi. The former president of the United States can say that anyone that attends one of those presidential candidate rallies, this is Donald Trump's rallies, is a Nazi. It's a gathering of Nazis. Anyone who proposes that mass migration be limited or anything like that is a Nazi, a fascist. And looking at the discourse or watching the discourse on the university sort of campuses where this sort of madness is incubated is in itself illustrates. So two groups are arguing in on a university campus. Now, bear in mind they're all like 20 years old or something, and so it'll start, "Oh, you're a fascist," and that still doesn't seem to get the traction that they wanted to. "Oh yeah, well, you're a Nazi," and that's that. So then the next day, "You're Hitler." Now, let's if you take the reverse, and that there was a series of escalations in name calling of someone else, say a black lesbian, and there were various racial and homophobic slurs that were used there, then the whole apparatus of the university and the social media and everything else would come down hard on the person who said that, and they would have nowhere to hide. They'd be attacked, destroyed. No amount of groveling apologies would get them off the hook. So we need to sort of just address this, because every attack against Trump and Trump supporters and even the president now, for goodness sakes, it inevitably includes every hit piece, every slur, everything inevitably includes fascist, Nazi, Hitler, and KKK is often thrown in as well, just for good measure. Now, they do this for and the policies are reminiscent of 1930s Central Europe, and we all know how the Holocaust ended up. So that whether they call the president a Nazi directly or indirectly or by inference, it doesn't matter. That's always their go-to, always their go-to. So straight white people can be accused of being fascist, Nazi, KKK, or even Hitler directly. Now, what if white people had the same protections as all the other groups? So if you call someone a Nazi or a fascist, then you're going to get dragged into court. You will lose your job. You will be unemployable. Your bank account will be closed. You will be kicked out of university and so on. Then that would sort of level the playing field a bit, because that's always their go-to when they're wanting to malign white people, which they do constantly, and they fancy themselves with the resistance, fighting back against whatever. Then they believe they have the right to do this. But this language of everyone you disagree with is Hitler, is literally Hitler, is a language that condones really any sort of suspension of the legal rights of white people. You don't have any legal rights. You're a Nazi. We don't give Nazis legal rights. And this sort of language creates, certainly through the legal system and certainly through the public service and the administration of public services, delivery of public services, we have a right to treat these people, I guess, because they're Nazis. And if you look at, say, the disaster relief that was being handed out during, say, floods or tornadoes, things like that, there are direct instructions. Anybody with a Trump Trump for president sign in their front yard or on their house, whatever, don't give anything to them. Well, why? Well, because they're Nazis. They're Nazis. Look, Nazis. They're fucking fascists. Of course, we have a right, an obligation not to give them any help because they're not. Oh, okay. So this attitude permeates, and it goes beyond just mere rhetoric or mere throwaway slogans or one-liners. It actually goes into real behavior. And these people believe they have a moral right, responsibility, or obligation to treat such people harshly because, well, they're Nazis. We're allowed to. Now, so I think this has to stop again, because it's the primary go-to, whether it's news anchors who are constantly raving on about white supremacists and Nazis and this, that, next thing. Joe Biden, the goons in the deep state, they rave on about this, the far right, white supremacy and so on. This is always their go-to, and it has to be just as I believe has to be made just as illegal as using the N-word or homophobic slurs. For example, if there's a word begins with F to describe homosexual people, and that's effectively being criminalized. People get thrown into prison for that, or fined, or harshly, roughly treated by the courts because it's oppressing minorities or this or that. But the reality is that everyone is entitled to, regardless whether they're LGBTQ or whether they're black or whatever, everyone is entitled to due process of law and exactly the same protections and exactly the same treatments as anyone else. That's equal before the law. That's how it's meant to work. That's why Western society stands head and shoulders above all other societies, equal before the law. Very few societies have ever achieved that. And if they do, it's usually fleeting, and the West has completely lost that. Look at the way the legal system was used to go after Donald Trump. It was horribly perverted and abused, and they went after him like hounds on the scent, for goodness sakes. And again, it constantly came back to the news anchors and the commentators and the commentariat generally. Well, we're allowed to because he's a Nazi. He's literally Hitler. We're allowed to do these things. And well, no, you're not. And if you go around this, everyone's a Nazi and Hitler and then you will be put in prison. And so we need to have that I think, that rebalancing of where white people can be slurred and denounced and defamed endlessly, and that's okay. No, it's not okay. And given how it's fed into the suspension of legal rights for white people, or white people that the deep state doesn't like, then we really need to address that. And part of that addressing is to to prevent that language. You know, even the assassination attempts on President Trump. Well, I'm allowed to. Why wouldn't you? He's literally Hitler. That same narrative, and we have to stop that, not just for presidential candidates, but towards any white person. You've been with Taskus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.